Welcome to the Neuro Performance Podcast with your host, Andy Murphy. Join us as we delve into the advanced high-performance tactics he uses with his elite clientele across the globe. Let's unlock a whole new world of business potential together.
Why would you care about friendship? Friendship is like, yeah, go out with your friends, hang out with your friends. Why would you care about friendship on like a global scale? What's in it, Simon? What's happening?
So let me take one step back and try and get to an answer. Our understanding of addiction largely comes from an experiment that was done, I think, in like the 50s or 60s, where they put a rat in a cage. There was one thing of water where it was plain water and one thing that was laced with drugs.
Right.
And in short order, the rat discovered the drug-laced beverage and loved it, drank more and more until it killed itself. And our understanding of addiction largely comes from this study. There was a guy named, I think his name was Bruce Alexander, who said, hold on, it's flawed. The whole study is flawed. Because rats, like us, are social animals. And we put a rat by itself in solitude. Of course it became an addict. But that's not what you're supposed to do with social animals. So he recreated the experiment.
Welcome to the Neuro Performance Podcast with your host, Andy Murphy. Join us as we delve into the advanced high-performance tactics he uses with his elite clientele across the globe. Let's unlock a whole new world of business potential together.
What's going on, Neuro Performers, and welcome to episode 435. Hope you're amazing as always, and life is treating you. Hope it's treating you really good. I really do. As always, hope you're enjoying the episodes and you're listening to it on all the places, right? So Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you listen to this, I appreciate you. And speaking of appreciating, I appreciate this topic. If you don't know Simon Sinek, he's a special dude. He's a very clever thought leader. And it's definitely something that I'm going to be leaning into more because obviously I'm very well known across the world for tuning brains and CEOs and executive teams and founders and traders and high performers to really accelerate what they do. And so something that's going to take 4 years, why can't we do it in a year, right? That's what I do for people. But there's also another element of entrepreneurism that just doesn't really get spoke about. Why doesn't it get spoke about? It could be as simple as the industry, especially online industry, has really become a wash of salespeople and marketers, marketing and selling to you to create brands that, well, they make money or allegedly make money. And lots of them do, some don't, right? But is that to do with the actual system or is it to do with the actual individual? Well, the systems generally work, right? Most of the time. There's a lot of scammers out there and sketchy people, but generally, marketing and branding and all the rest of it, it works, right? The challenge is why most people don't achieve those results isn't to do with the system, right? The protocols. It's to do with you, plain and simple. And as a human being, we go on such an emotional ride, right? And when we're building a business, what it actually does is bring up all of the trigger points, all of the traumas, all of our limited beliefs, all of our pains, all of our doubts, all of our insecurities, and truly all of our mental health issues. Because what I teach is with business is nothing to do with business. It's got nothing to do. It's how easy is it? There's 1,000 million systems out there to grow your brand. That's never the issue to find the system, right? YouTube will teach you. That's not the issue anymore. That's just there. It's obvious and you can find it and you can find it for free or you can pay. That's easy these days. What the secret sauce is really understanding yourself, really understanding what your thresholds are, what your limitations are, what really how to build you into that superhuman version of yourself that then is able to take those protocols and systems to build your brand. But what happens is people going through this journey, most people don't achieve it because they just get stuck and it's just not spoke about. I know that a lot of the top marketers in the world, right? And the challenge is I've spoke to them and they give it, yeah, mindset. Well, we've got a little piece on that. Well, okay. Okay, I get that's why you don't want to focus on it. And also they're not the experts in it, right? They know how to sell, they know how to market, they know how to do all that stuff. And that's awesome. It's awesome. What my focus is being the expert that shows you how to push past boundaries from a very technical aspect. We can go into such micro detail, even into the structure of memories and how to rewrite the structure of a memory, right? So when we focus on this, it brings up other elements of the entrepreneurial journey. Now, you find a lot of entrepreneurs who have a lot of success. And it's actually covered in this interview, and that's why I like this interview. And I really wanted to share it with you. And of course, I give my 2 cents worth, or $1 worth, or $1,000,000 worth, or whatever you value of it. But I break down this interview, and I haven't done this in a while, so this is going to be fun. And the truth is, you find a lot of successful entrepreneurs become solopreneurs. And solopreneurs is fantastic. It's great. It doesn't mean you need a big team around you. It more is the aspect of that you're leading your own vision and you have a small integrated team around you that you then lead, right? And that's awesome. It's awesome. But this also can be a lonely ride. It can be a very lonely ride. And if you're at the start of your entrepreneurial journey listening to this and you have people around you who don't understand what you're pushing towards or what the vision is in your head, then it can be extra lonely, right? I find this such an interesting topic because if your partner and I mean your a romantic partner, your wife, your husband, or whatever you want to call them, if they don't understand or if they've never done business or they've never earned their own income stream, rather they're in a corporate world or they get paid an hourly wage or a salary, they don't really understand that the brain or the mind of the entrepreneur doesn't really switch off. It's always thinking of ideas, it's always wondering, it's always pondering concepts, right? It's always networking. And this can be such an emotional ride. And some of my clients, some of my private clients, not the ones that have gone through, well, the people who've gone through all my courses, like the 8 Figure Thinker and things like that. One of the things I offer, besides all the technicality of stuff, is actually it's interaction, it's community, right? And community as an entrepreneur is huge. Or having someone to just hang out to and just talk to gain perspective over something. There's massive value in that. And now, if you've been in this ride of an entrepreneur for a long time, you know there's ebbs and flows with income. You know there's ups and downs with your emotional state, sometimes on a monthly, yearly, or a daily basis. And what I love about this interview is they talk about friendships. Now, everyone talks about networks. Your network is your net worth. But again, it's all about making money. Well, what about just friendships? What about friendships, right? There's such a brain chemical that gets produced, which is a bonding chemical, right? And I'm sure you guys know it, oxytocin, right? The it's such an important chemical. And if you've got other things going on like ADHD or dyslexia or even, and all of these different types of disorders is the wrong word, right? What word should we use? We should use symptoms. Symptoms is a better word, right? Because symptoms means that we are experiencing an emotional roller coaster, right? Or you're locking onto something, or you're not understanding something the same as somebody else. Ultimately, you're seeing the world your way. Now, what's great about psychology or psychotherapy is that they've been able to put these into boxes. Now, as you know, I have a lot of issues with normal therapy, coaching, psychotherapy, psychologist in general, right? Doesn't mean you've not got outliers and amazing versions of those people. And there is. And there's more, the more knowledge that's out there, like it is now, I really believe that everyone's game is stepped up. And it's so important. It's so important because it gives people the ability to not self-diagnose. Again, is the wrong term. It's not necessarily self-diagnosing, but becoming self-aware of your tendencies. So that means rather than thinking you're crazy or broken or something's wrong, what it actually means is that you're able to understand what's going on. Like with ADHD, for example, anxiety and depression is actual symptoms of ADHD, but it's also symptoms of lots of other things, right? But at least if you go, "Oh, okay, that's similar to me," then at least I can understand myself more, which means I'm not going to go to the extreme highs and extreme lows. Does that make sense? So you can maintain or monitor things much, much easier. And on the entrepreneur journey, it's so important. So back to this interview. I know for a fact with myself that because I'm so introspective, I really don't talk about what's going on inside my head to too many people. I don't like that vulnerability, right? Not my issues, I get it. I don't like that vulnerability because I really can psychoanalyze myself and work through a lot of stuff. And I also, again, over the past 12 months have brought in a very specific coach, a very specific person, right? So, John D, if you're listening out there, yeah, you've helped me out massively on this roller coaster. And it's, again, massive amounts of trauma that I've worked through. And yeah, all the things that I know, all the thousands of people I've worked with, all of the high level world class people I've delved into the minds with. And yes, I still need support. Shocking, right? Every coach needs a coach. Every world class expert needs a world class expert. It's just a fact, right? And even having someone that you have a safe place that you can just unload is very important. Now, not everyone has access to these people. That's one of the reasons why I do the podcast, right? And one of the reasons I really started the podcast is because I was traveling the world and I found myself sometimes being isolated because I can lock in with some crazy OCD, right? Or OC, right? Obsessive compulsive, maybe not the disorder, but hey, we can go borderline with that too. But the obsessive compulsive means I can kind of isolate myself sometimes. And what brings you out of that is friendships. And it's something I've never spoke about on the podcast. It really, I haven't. And that's why I love this. Because Simon Sinek talks about the power of friendships. And it's interesting because I really believe you need different types of friends around you. I really do. You need that friend who's going to sit there and listen, right? That's someone who's really going to empathize and come into your world with you and be able to really deep talk. Now, they might not know what they're talking about, right? They might not be able to give advice, but at least it's an ear that you feel safe with. The other type of friend is like someone who doesn't give a shit. And, and I mean that in the best, most beautiful way. They're just like, yeah, 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 let's go and play, right? Let's go and hang out. Let's go and do something. And sometimes that's the best thing ever. Andrew Huberman talks about this, not this, but a slightly different topic in a slightly different way. He talks about sometimes with anxiety, for example, and I love this concept. He gives it with anxiety, we can be so introspective that we can't get out of the frame. But then we need to externalize our focus, right? Then that suddenly our external focus changes our perception, which then allows us to be present in a different way. Rather than trying to go so deep inside, sometimes we need to come outside. Does that make sense? And so when you really get your head around what I'm trying to talk about today, and if this is the first episode you've listened to, then please go through the other 430 plus episodes. Definitely do that, because this isn't a normal topic, but I feel it needs to get shared. I feel that it's important. And if you're sitting there going, Andy, right now, oh yeah, that's all very well and good, you're talking about friendships, but I don't have any friends because I am in a remote part of the world or location, or this has happened to me, or I'm ill or injured, or whatever it is, right? I want you to really understand that friendships or bonding can be done in many different ways. You can have very cheap things like Better Health for counseling, or you can go all the way up to the most technical person in the world. It's just, again, having someone to listen to you. Or you go into deep meditation, you read spiritual text, you whatever. There's many different ways to do it. You get what I'm saying? Or you just absorb your brain in happiness, or you absorb your brain in what you want to become like. You absorb your brain in podcasts like this, audio books, interviews, autobiographies. What this does for the brain is, again, it can externalize and internalize what is actually going on inside of us. And so I'm going to break this down right now. I'm going to go over to the actual episode because I've just been talking. But I'm excited about this because it's more heart-centered, it's more in-depth, and it's more caring. And I feel that's what's needed in the world right now. And I definitely feel it's what's needed in the entrepreneurial world. And it's such a key missing thing. You've either got full-on Burning Man hippie side, or you've got clinical psychology, or you've got spirituality. And why can't we blend this together? Obviously, the neuroscience too, the biohacking side, but why can't we blend this all together? That's really who I am and what I do. So that's why I want to share this with you. So let's jump into the episode. But just before we do, make sure that you're heading over to andymurphy.online. Andymurphy.online. What is it? Andymurphy.online. Sign up for the Neuro's newsletter. We blast out a couple of things a week. You're going to love them. Lots of cool stuff. What else? We got the 8-Figure Thinker certification coming out, which is a blend of NLP, neuroscience, behavioral psychology to take your coaching and consulting to a whole different level. Build yourself so you can work with 8-figure clients and double, triple, quadruple your income using your already existing lead generation strategy of all the different stuff. This is about taking you to a whole different level and understanding you at an 8-figure level so you can work with 8-figure clients. So check out that. It's coming. It's coming. I'm excited about it. So speaking of being excited about it, let's jump into this episode and let's see where this goes. Let's go and have some fun. And I'll see you at the end of the show, or I'll see you on the next episode. Make sure you're subscribing, writing me a review. Much appreciated.
Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? As you can see, there's nothing up here because there was nothing here. I'll tell you how this came to be. So first of all, thank you, and I hate you, Anastasia. But we were having a conversation in the little courtyard yesterday, and I bumped into Simon. I've seen him around a bunch. I love him. I always tell you I have the biggest brain crush on you.
Feelings mutual.
But we're having the discussion, and then Sarah came out from the team, was like, "Are you guys speaking?" "No, we're not." Blah blah blah. "Would you like to?" I was like, "Oh," I said, "I'll speak if he does something. I just want to listen to him." And then Anastasia was like, "I heard you." And now here we are. So I'm not going to waste anybody's time, because I'm sure many of you will agree with me, but if you don't know, this man right here is honestly one of the greatest thinkers of our generation. I love how his mind works. I love how he challenges us, how he thinks about thinking. And really, all I wanted to know, and it sort of is, the genesis was yesterday, is what are you fascinated by right now? Because I know you're always working on something, or you're always drilling into something.
Yeah.
What are you fascinated by right now?
Well, it's interesting because the common theme that we've been hearing from all the talks today, which is the passion isn't some manufactured thing,
Right.
where you sort of find the passion and do what you're passionate. Passion is an output, not an input. And what we hear is somebody finds an obsession for something, and that then becomes their passion. And the same is definitely true, I'm sure, for you, and definitely true for me. So the thing that I'm sort of obsessing about right now is friendship. There's an entire industry to help us be better leaders. There's an entire industry to help us be better parents. There's an entire industry to help us eat better, exercise better, sleep better. And yet, there's barely anything on how to be a friend. And if you think about all the mental health challenges that so many of us are facing today, whether it's coping with stress, depression, anxiety, addiction, even obsession with longevity, friendship is the ultimate biohack that literally fixes all those things.
It's interesting that you said this. So I've always felt like, I'm not a very superstitious person, grew up very religious. But I do believe in some sort of magic in the universe. And every time I bump into you, I feel like we're thinking about the same thing, but on a slightly different path.
And usually other people are forced to listen to us just talk about that
and here it's
slightly
happening
different
again,
path.
so I apologize. But the reason this fascinated me is because I've been thinking a lot about friendship and what it means. And a friend of mine actually said to me on a trip recently, she said, in successful spaces, oftentimes people will use the word sacrifice. We heard many people, we heard Martin, we heard so many people up on the stage saying sacrifice, 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 sacrifice. And she said one of the most powerful things ever to me. She said, when we say we've sacrificed something for our career, we shouldn't be afraid to put a name to who that sacrifice was, because oftentimes it was the people in our lives that we call friends.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, have you been thinking about that? Like, what is the balance? What is the confluence? Like, how do you think of friendship and then the sacrifice that brings you here to sit with people where you may make new friends or not?
Well, I think definitely for me, and I can't speak for anybody else, but definitely for me, I think the sacrifice was lopsided. And I think, especially for high performers who I think later on in life, you start to realize that that network of friends sometimes isn't there.
Okay, neuro performers, let me just jump in there. Sacrifice is the key word that he's talking about there. And that's great. And it's important. And we do need to sacrifice things. But the truth is, at what cost? Now, he's talking about friendships, right? Now, I have a lot of friends, right? But friends require an energy output, right? And that means an energy input from them. And that is the energy exchange. Now, it has to be at a certain even level, otherwise you feel like not valued. Does that make sense? And it's the same with if you're working for somebody, it's the same in a business partnership, it's the same with friendships. Friendships require time, effort, and energy. And it's not about taking, it's about giving, right? But you're also allowed to take, but as long as you give. And the word sacrifice, going back to, you're not just sacrificing friends. Sometimes we're sacrificing our health, our relationships, right? Sometimes we're sacrificing time. And when we start to really step back and look at our life or our business, was it really worth it? And I'm not saying don't create businesses. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying definitely do that. It's awesome. But I want you to understand that what sacrifice. I know for me, when I go back, I was so obsessed years ago. I'm still very obsessive, but years ago, I was extremely obsessive. And what you've got to look at is, what is the driver behind the obsession, or what is the driver behind the sacrifice? And often it isn't happiness. Often it isn't pleasure. It is pain. You're running away from something, right? You're running away from being who you were, or going back to how you grew up, or you get the idea, right? So when we start to analyze that, sacrifice is I don't even know if I like that word. It's the truth, but I don't know if I like that word in this context, because sacrifice is kind of like, it's all or nothing. And when we're talking about this, it is an all or nothing, but does it have to be? I rewind, right, in my 20s, from 24 to probably 30 years old. I Yeah, maybe 29. I think I moved to LA when I was 29 from New Zealand. Yeah, I think it was about right. I'd just gone through that nervous breakdown, bankruptcy, and put together the resort in Fiji. Business partner stole all my money. And it so if I rewind the clock, was it worth it? Well, probably not. Was it worth it because of the lessons or the perspective I gained and the growth? Yeah, it was. I value that growth. I value those lessons. I wouldn't be obviously be who I am right now talking to you the way I am if I hadn't have gone through such high highs and low lows, which gives you the experience. And yes, everything happens for a reason. I truly believe that. I also believe it doesn't have to be such a painful experience, right? Because time is what I teach as a currency. Time, effort, and energy is a currency, and it's a currency that's finite. You can never, ever get it back. So if you was to reevaluate all the time that was wasted spinning in circles, procrastinating, or reliving the trauma, or curled in a bundle on your bed, right? Or crying, or heartbroken, or the you pushed yourself to an absolute limit on health and broken through that limit, destroyed that limit, but because you're so headstrong, just kept pushing. That sounds, that's about me, and so I'm sure some of you can relate. Was it worth it? No. The answer is no, because I've lived in some absolutely beautiful places, in some beautiful locations with some beautiful people. And often, if I look back, especially when I was younger, I was so caught up in my head that I was like not living in this life. I was never present because I was always future pacing to when everything would be okay. And so when you become obsessed about a future vision, you miss what's happening now. And there's biological consequences, there's relationship consequences, there's health consequences, there's also business consequences. Because when you get laser beamed on one specific goal, you kind of miss what the universe or life is trying to give you, and it could be so much more expansive than you ever thought was possible. Does that sound right for you? And so that word sacrifice is such an intense word. So was it worth it? I don't know. Only you know. But moving forwards, is it worth it? Repeating the patterns, repeating the past, repeating the mistakes, like becoming so rigid instead of having behavioral flexibility, Was it or is it worth it? Well, this is a beautiful time to reevaluate that. Maybe you want to press pause and have a think, but it's also with friendships, right? It's also with friendships. Are you holding on to friendships for the wrong reasons? Are you not allowing people in who want to be for the right or wrong reasons? Have a think about that. Let's jump back in.
You know, the number of us who have canceled on friends because a meeting comes up,
Yeah.
because they'll understand,
Yeah.
right? And yet the reverse is very rarely true. That we'll say to somebody for a meeting, can we meet on Friday instead of Thursday? Because in my calendar, we wouldn't say it, but in my calendar is a friend. And definitely for me, the times where I have tripped, slipped, fell, hit rock bottom, felt alone, any of those spaces, my work wasn't going to rescue me. And it was by the grace of some higher power that there was always a friend who saw it and recognized it in me, who picked me up. And so I realized that we talk about investing, we talk about, you know, and this is a different kind of investment. You and I were talking about it the other day, you know, which is people are moving in the United States, you know, people are moving from California and New York to Texas and Florida to avoid paying taxes because they want to save time. And yet, where else, I want it to be the reverse. Like, I'm not worried about like saving the money, you know, to be in a place I don't want to live.
Right.
I want to live with the people I love, and if it costs more, and by the way, by cost, I mean that maybe I won't achieve that thing, or maybe I'll miss that deadline, or maybe I'll miss that quarter. You know, it's a different kind of sacrifice. We think of sacrifice as always against people, but I can make a sacrifice for my career, for my friends. And it's about striking that right balance. Because your friends will be there for you, your work won't.
Yeah, you see, I love that line. Your friends will be there for you, your work won't. I was talking to a friend about this conversation, and my friend was like, what do you love about Simon so much? And I said, what I love about Simon is this, is I feel like you're a truffle pig of like ideas that will shape the world. And what I mean by that is, like...
So I'm French.
Yeah, whatever you choose to take from it, take from it. What I choose to say by saying that is,
thank you.
I love seeing what you're sniffing around in because I believe it's connected to something far greater.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not the truffle, but it's the meal that is now going to influence and the restaurant that it's now going to shape. You have that brain. It's friendship, yes, but why would you care about friendship? Friendship is like, yeah, go out with your friends, hang out with your friends. Why would you care about friendship on like a global scale? What's in it, Simon? What's happening?
So let me take one step back and try and get to an answer. Our understanding of addiction largely comes from an experiment that was done, I think, in like the 50s or 60s, where they put a rat in a cage, and there was one thing of water where it was plain water, and one thing that was laced with drugs.
Right.
And in short order, the rat discovered the drug-laced beverage and loved it, drank more and more until it killed itself. And our understanding of addiction largely comes from this study. There was a guy named, I think his name was Bruce Alexander, who said, hold on, it's flawed. The whole study is flawed.
Oh.
Because rats, like us, are social animals. And we put a rat by itself in solitude. Of course it became an addict. But that's not what you're supposed to do with social animals. So he recreated the experiment where he put, like, first of all, he put lots of rats in the cage.
No way.
So it was social, community. They put like wheels and mazes, and they were having kids and babies, and two waters, a plain water and the drug-laced water. And they could see from the data, they knew which ones, and they all tried enough of the drug-laced water to get addicted.
Right.
But they didn't. Their taking in of the water declined, and they only drank the plain water, which starts to give evidence that if we have close friendships and if we live in community, perhaps we're less susceptible to all addiction.
That's an interesting concept right there, right? Addiction. So what is addiction? Addiction is a coping mechanism, right? And we think about addiction to being drugs, right? But addictions, well, they're definitely drugs, but there's so much more than that. Addictions can be to behavioral patterns, right? Repeating cycles. And sometimes we get so clear we can see these patterns happening again in our own life, and we just don't know how to get out of them because we are addicted. We can be addicted to brain chemicals. We can be addicted to self-sabotage. We can be addicted to food. We can be addicted to social media, right? We can be addicted to work. We can be addicted to winning. We can be addicted to losing. We can be addicted to feeling good, feeling bad. We can be addicted to partying, right? But when we understand it's a coping mechanism with all addictions, even good ones, then what we've got to understand is addictions are what? Well, they're really habits. And when we can really start to detail and understand habits, then, and again, I go through this all in detail with the eight-figure thinker. It's I really believe that the way we understand habits is kind of wrong too, right? We can talk about micro habits, making micro decisions, but these are all conscious things. Habits are absolutely unconscious. They are automated. And people talk about habits being a bad thing. Habits are awesome. Habits are a great thing. It's the bad habits that are the problem, right? Habits are just repeated grooves in our brain. So our brain saves neural energy. That's all it's about, right? You walk. That is a habit. It is a learned behavior, right? You aren't born being able to walk. You learn how to walk. And this is the same thing, and if we don't become aware of these patterns, good, bad, sabotage, positive, then they can become very addictive. And addictions in general can be very self-destructive to our external world, to our relationships, our bonds, our and I love what he said. He said that work won't pull you out. Work won't save you. I've tried. Have you tried? I've tried, right? Going through some harsh times, you throw yourself into work, you often create results. And sometimes they're really good results, right? There's actual book, and it goes back, I think it's 100-year-old book. It's How to Stop Worrying. It's a really good book, by the way. You should definitely read it. It's very, very thick. But the basis of this book is that all of these, we're talking like in extreme poverty, people have got like one leg, homeless, and we're talking true homeless back in like the Victorian age or whatever, right? It's it- and then they become obsessed for 3 months, just absolutely obsessed for 3 months in business and moving their life forwards. And all of them in the story created a much better life for themselves. I love it. I love it, right? So, is it the work that we become addicted to or obsessed about? Or should we, like I teach and I believe, we should become addicted and obsessed? And both of those are extreme words, but I'm going to use them, right? In becoming the ultimate version of us that is able to handle the weight of playing life and business at that level. Do you understand what I just said? There's a massive difference because you become obsessed with the micro details of work, and you'll create potentially an external result. But I've seen it in so many clients who are worth like tens of millions, if not more, dollars, pounds, euro, whatever you want to, whatever domination you want to use, denomination. Sorry, but it doesn't mean they're happier. It doesn't mean they're more fulfilled. And you might go, yeah, yeah, Andy, but at least they got loads of money. I've had clients who've got all the money you want, all the money they want, and then somebody gets sick in their family. Would they trade all of that money for their family member not to be ill anymore? And we're talking cancer. We're talking bad things. Of course they would, because money isn't doesn't hold the value. What holds the value is the relationships. So when we talk about sacrificing, and these people, like the person I'm talking about, they had all the money and they went all around the world using all the top people in the world to help save them, and it still didn't work. And they'd sacrifice it all for that person back. And so I just want you to make sure that you're not sacrificing everything. Everything. Do you hear the words? The extremeness again. Sacrificing everything for what might or might not work out. Deep conversations today, right? The food for thought. Let's jump back in.
And I know that there's a lot being talked about the addiction of social media, the addiction of cell phones, which is true. Which is true. It is a highly dopamine-producing device, and that it's causing loneliness. And I would argue that if we worked on the friendships, and more important, if we taught our children how to be friends, that perhaps they are less likely to get addicted. And I think, and I think. So when you talk about what's the global responsibility, we're teaching people how to do everything. You know, we're finding the hacks for everything. The one thing we aren't doing is the old-fashioned, hard, slow thing of making friends.
So, okay, so here's what I've been thinking about. Over the past 2 years, I've been traveling, spending most of my time traveling. And in that time, I've been thinking about how you maintain a friendship, how you keep a friendship, and how you build a friendship. And in that, I came to realize most of our friendships, we sort of leave to coincidence. I bumped into this person, I went to the same school as them, we were in the same church, the same company, and that defines our friendships. And to what you're saying now, working on, I realized that no one has ever taught us how to work on a friendship, like actually work on a friendship, you know?
And most people think they're good friends. If you ask most people, are you a good friend? Most people would say, yeah, I'm a good friend. And so I said, have you sacrificed that meeting to hang out with a friend? Do you call your friends on their birthday and sing them happy birthday, or do you just put a thing on social media saying happy birthday because you saw everybody else put it on social media? You know, when a friend is depressed, do you go over to their house and climb into bed with them and sit and watch movies and eat ice cream all day and be depressed with them? You know, have you done all those things? Have you ever said to your friend, I love you? Not love ya, not love you, I love you. Have you done those things? Are you a good friend? And the way to prove that those things matter is, has anybody ever done that for you? When you've been depressed, have they come and just sat and been depressed with you? Not trying to fix you, not trying to pull you out of the mud, just been depressed with you. Have they said, I love you to you?
Right.
I learned this from a friend of mine he's a warrior. He's active duty military, multiple tours. He's risked his life to save the lives of others. He is a badass. He is a warrior. And you know, you and I have colleagues and coworkers. They have brothers and sisters. And I remember the first time he called me brother. I remember it was real. Hey, brother, you know? But what really stood out was the first time we got off the phone, and he ended the phone call with, I love you. Again, not love ya, not love you, I love you. And I remember what that felt like. And men definitely, don't do this with each
What did
other.
it feel like?
I felt hugged. I felt safe. I felt that I knew that I could tell him and be anything, and he wouldn't judge me or look down on me. And it was so powerful that I decided to start experimenting and saying it to the people who I loved. And I have some friends who are good people, kind people, generous people, but most would describe them as cold.
Yeah.
Not warm people. And I remember, I'm thinking of one friend in particular, and I decided to say, like, I left his house, and I was like, I love you. And I remember watching him sort of be struck by it.
Yeah.
In very short order, maybe 2 or 3 times after I saw him, he started saying, I love you back. He started hugging me in a way that he's never hugged me. I gave him a kiss on the cheek, he kissed me back. That's where the line is. But you live a life where you're away a lot, you're on the road a lot. I mean, your career necessitates you to be on the road.
Right.
How has that affected your friendships? More important, what have you done to maintain the closeness of those friendships with the crazy life that you live?
I believe in uranium-enriched friendships. That's how I think about it. So I think a friendship, like I've tried to study friendships as much as I can, over the past, maybe like I've really focused on it over the past like 4 or 5 years. And I remember once I was in an interview and somebody said, "Hey, what's your goal? What's your dream?" It was actually Forbes magazine. And I said, "I would love to be successful, but I wish there was a top 10 list for somebody who has a friend's net worth." Because that's honestly what I'm trying to do. And maybe it's confirmation bias, but I find that answer, keeps coming back to me. I was on a trip to Greece a few years ago, and if you've ever been to any of these places where people are on boats and having a great time in the water, it hypnotizes you. And I turned to one of the Greek guys I was with and I said, "Nick, if I was trying to get a boat, what boat should I get?" And I'll never forget this. His friend jumped in and he said, Ella, Trevor, Ella, let me tell you something. The best boat is your friend's boat." And it was a joke that had so many layers to me, because the one was, yeah, it's true. Like, it is, if you own a boat, there's a lot of stress. You don't want to own a boat unless you really love boats. But the thing I found profound was the fact that everybody who has a boat needs friends to be on that boat with them. And if everybody works to get the boat, no one has time to have friends to come on the boat with them. And every boat I know is full of friends who are on that boat.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
You know what I mean? It's like
And
So to answer your question, so what I've been doing is I recently got back. I just got back from Japan. We did a 10-day trip with 16 of my friends. That group has grown, and all I try to do it is so meticulous. It is meaningful. My friends sometimes get irritated with me because they go like, "Why are you so controlled about it?" And I go, "Because we have to work on our friendship. I know it seems like it's just going to happen, but we have to work on it. When are we having this dinner? We have a song that we sing, which is called 'Are You Ready for the Question?' And we sing it maybe like the 4th or 5th night of every hangout.
in the restaurant, you're at that table?
Yeah, we sing it. Are you ready for the question? Are you ready for the question? And then we ask ourselves a question that we've been struggling with, because you realize sometimes you can even become a superhero to your own friend group, and then you stop releasing or letting go or digging in or scraping away. And you'll find your friend will be sitting next to you laughing and going through the worst depression they've ever been through in their lives, until you say, "Hey, is everything okay? What are you struggling with?" And then they open up and you go, "Why didn't you tell me?" They go, "Because I didn't want to burden you. I love you as my friend." And so that's what I try to do more than anything in the world. That's my greatest joy.
That's such a common misunderstanding, Rich. I didn't want to burden you. I didn't want to bother you with my problems. And I think people don't realize that we don't build trust by offering help. We build trust by asking for it. And
whoa, say that again.
we don't build trust by offering help. We build trust by asking for it.
Damn.
And
why is that?
Because it's your example. And I'm sure everyone in this room has had this experience where someone was in pain, didn't call you for fear of bothering you or interrupting you. You're a busy person. And then you find out once they're okay. And again, I'll just speak from personal experience. A friend of mine went through something. He wasn't completely out of it, but he was doing better. And I'm like, "Haven't talked in a couple of weeks." And he sort of like slowly started to say, "I've been struggling."
Yeah.
And I said, "Why didn't you call me?" He says, "I didn't want to bother you." And my immediate reaction was, "You asshole. How dare you be so selfish to deny me the honor of being there for you in your time of
showing up for you."
And that's what it is. It's the incredible, that's when you know a friend is a friend, when it is an absolute honor to be there at the time they least want to call you.
That's an interesting concept, isn't it? Friendships are made when you reach out for help, you know? So if you are going through something right now as an entrepreneur, are you reaching out for help? Or are you being as stubborn and going, "Okay, I can get through this on my own"? We all need support. But it's having that vulnerability. And they talk about masculinity and alphaness, right? And it's been such a silly definition. Alphaness seems to be like, again, I go back to, it's stupid, right? It's so stupid what's pushed in the narrative in the entrepreneurial world. It's stupid, and it is a lie, by the way. And it's from broken people or people that aren't as self-aware as they claim to be. It's that alphaness to constant get up. As soon as you get up, get to work, get pushing. If you're not making money, what are you doing? Push and push and push and push and push. And then you look at other cultures, right? There's a very American culture, and obviously I've been in and out of America for like the 16 years. But it isn't a very American culture. And it's been infiltrated through the rest of the world, including like Japan. I suppose it's not just America. Japan had the culture, whether it's changed right now, but had the culture that they never wanted to be the first person to leave the office at the end of the day. So literally they wouldn't be doing work, but they'd just be sleeping in the chairs because they didn't want to be that person. So what is it, right? That's alphaness, that's dominance. Get to work, hustle, look at my big muscles. Hey, I got muscles, I've been a fighter, I've done all these things. But there's a alphaness is, or masculinity is defined very much the wrong way. You should be so open, so vulnerable that you can walk into that flame, walk into that fire, know you are going to get burned, but are doing it for the right reason. And so with entrepreneurism, having the vulnerability to express what's going on without shame, but also knowing that really you're not going to be judged because no one gives a shit. No one cares, man, because everyone's going through the same crap anyway, right? So being that vulnerable and saying, do you know what? I am absolutely burnt out. I don't want to do this right now. That's vulnerable rather than just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. Because I tell you something, I have been that person, and it is a youth thing. It's an ignorance, the wrong word, naivety. Naivety that there's not biological consequences. I burnt out so bad, I gave myself a nervous breakdown. So I was sitting there shaking. Literally, people go, nervous breakdown, nervous breakdown. Are you sure you did? Were you literally sitting there and your whole body is shaking and your hair's falling out? No, probably not. Some people have. Maybe it's you. But having that vulnerability to understand that you can go and get help, and it's not just from I need support because I'm feeling sad. No, it can be also the opposite. I know I am the bottleneck in my business and I need to accelerate. Even admitting that means then you go and take action and get support and guidance, right? That's what I'm here for. And the truth is, that is going to get you what you want way faster than just being egotistical and closed minded. Make sense?
Do you think that women have a better grasp of friendship than men?
100%. I think for that reason, women make better CEOs. I think I do. I mean, we've heard it from multiple female entrepreneurs on the stage today.
Yeah.
There is a better understanding of the human dynamic. Women come up to me more often than men, and they get my work much better. Men come up to me and ask for case studies.
That's interesting.
Men want me to prove that trusting people, loving people, taking care of people is a good thing for business. Women inherently understand that and make decisions accordingly. So yeah, I do think women are better at it. I think women are less afraid to say I love you to their friends too.
That right there is fascinating. And it's something I'm going to lean into because there's such a huge wealth transfer. And I'm around obviously family offices and high net worth individuals and next generation. And the majority of CEOs that are going to be in the future, by the way, are going to be women as this great wealth transfer happens. Just so you know, that's actually the statistics. And so I think that's absolutely fascinating because women are more connected to emotions, social dynamics, reading social cues because it's in their genetics to be able to multitask and also be able to keep a family emotions in place, right? So very interesting this big shift that's happening in the world. And yeah, for me, I'm going to be leaning into that. So thank you, Simon Sinek.
One of the, one of the conversations I had recently was about, the rise of the right in the world. And it's funny, we were talking to Anastasia yesterday about like the state of the world, and I mean, there's so many things happening that you can't really call it the state of the world. But one of the big things I've been worried about recently is young men and how angry they've become, how alone they've become, how isolated they've become, and then ironically, how they've turned that anger, isolation into a community. And it's weird because it's literally, there's communities of young men online who have formed communities based in and around loneliness, based in and around anger, and they don't try and become, it's interesting that you're saying all these things, they don't try and become friends, they don't try and teach each other to hug and to love and to feel, and no, they you know what I mean, they sort of foment these feelings, and they go, this is why we should hate women, and this is why we should hate the government, and this is why we should hate society, and this is why we should hate, and I wonder if this world that you're speaking about, we're sort of seeing the effects of it now, is like men who haven't found anything beyond, someone said it earlier on stage today, it's just like men going, what am I beyond what I do? Because a lot of these men are unemployed, and who am I because of who I am around?
I mean, it's a huge insight. And you asked before, what does this conversation have to do with the bigger world?
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever heard a serious discussion about understanding a 20-something-year-old virgin who lives with their parents and without a job, and as it connects to global terrorism, or moving to violence to solve my problems, and especially if you come from a shame-based society. And when you find other people who are suffering what you're suffering, or who get you, it's incredibly compelling, and you feel seen and you feel understood. And the work of Dia Khan, the British documentarian, she talks about this, whether you're talking about white supremacists or we're talking about jihadis, they are not driven by hate, they are driven by love. And her work is all about it. And this is what we don't understand, which is it's people who are missing love, desperately looking for love, and desperately looking for belonging. And when our nations don't provide us, this is getting into much sort of like, but when our leaders, and you and I have talked about this, which is, in the world today, I think there's been a total loss of idealism.
Yeah.
Our leaders used to talk about world peace and peace on earth. You and I having a conversation about world peace right now would sound cheesy and corny and weird. And I think there's been a loss of idealism. And when there's a loss of idealism and something to feel like we belong to larger than ourselves, larger than our nation, larger than the work that we do, if that's missing, we still look for that. We still look for that belonging, but unfortunately we find it down here.
Right.
And I think we're witnessing the loss of idealism in the world right now, how we're finding community at low levels and tearing each other apart.
Before we run out of time, there's one other thing I wanted to dig in, and learn from your mind. During Jay's presentation, it was really cool to see that moment where he asked the question. He said, what is the thing you wish you had done or you spent more time doing? And she said, I wish I'd spent more time with my friends. And that stuck with me, partially knowing what we're going to talk about in a way, but I was like, man, friends. And I've spoken to some of you in the audience here, by the way, some of the most successful people, venture capital, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and our parents and everything. And at some of the dinners, at some of the moments that we've had together, I've asked some of you, and I won't, single you out, but a lot of people have said, hey, and how's your friend group? And they go, oh man, I actually haven't seen my friends in a while, and I haven't, and you don't know. And do you think there is a way to find the balance between showing up as a family person, showing up as a mother, showing up as a father, showing up as, that nuclear unit, showing up as a CEO, showing up as a president, showing up? Do you think it's possible to show up in those worlds and then still make room for what society has deemed a nice to have? Because friendship is never seen as, the thing. Like, I came here last year with a friend as a +1, and I remember a few people like, who's this? And I was like, my friend. They're like, but what does he do? I was like, he's my friend. And they're like for a living? I was like, yeah, I'd like to think so. Yeah. And obviously he does things, but to me, he's my friend. I don't know what he does in that. Obviously I do, but I don't care. And I wonder if you think about that, for rooms like this, where people are so high-powered and so intense, and they focus and they go, family business. I hear a lot of people say that. I hear very people say, friends. I really, really work hard on my friendships. What do you say to that? It is more amazing to have an amazing experience with someone than by yourself. You can go do it by yourself and say, look what I did, versus, do you remember that time we did that? And I think that
especially for leaders, and I think leaders bear greater responsibility because people follow their leaders.
Yeah.
So goes the leader, so goes the organization, so goes the leader, so goes the country, always. So goes the parents, so go the children, right? Put your phones away, mom and dad are on their phone the whole time at dinner, right? And I think if the leader publicly said, I just want everybody to know it's Monday, Friday I'm leaving a little early, it's my friend's birthday, and we're gonna go celebrate, you'll find people prioritizing their friends more. I think it's a leadership problem.
I think it's something we all have to work on. And one other thing that I've realized in talking to people, just anecdotally, and then therapists who are really good studying in this space, is I think we shouldn't take for granted how much the abandoning or the ignoring of friendships has affected romantic relationships. Because people have now shifted all of the expectation, all of the support, all of the the love that they got from a community of friends, and they've moved it on to one person. And a lot of I think there's a few studies that have actually shown even having a friend where you can talk shit about your partner too, which is healthy, by the way.
Yeah.
Actually improves your chances of staying with your partner.
Oof, I'm having an insight here. Thank you for being the truffle pig and uncovering this magical little insight that the same thing is happening at work is happening in our relationships. So it used to be where we sort of had bowling leagues and we got our community from there.
Yes.
We got our sense of belief from church. Work was the place we made our living. We had barbecues with our neighbors. And over time, those things have disappeared. And now we demand of our work that you be the place of purpose. You be the place of community.
Yeah.
You be the place of my social life. Now you be the place that matches my politics. We're putting all this pressure on work to fulfill every desire I have. And we're doing the exact same thing in our relationships, which is we seem to abandon those outside places and we're asking of our partners to be everything all the time, always, which is an unreasonable and unfair standard to put on someone or be put on us.
I've never thought about it from the workplace as well, and that's why you're my favorite truffle pig. I know Anastasia has time to run, so I'll leave you with one thing that really, for me was perfectly apt for this conversation, and it's a saying that we have in South Africa in Zulu, which is umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu, which means a person is a person only because of the people. And I want to say that I'm genuinely a better person because of you, my friend. Thank you for being here with me. Thanks for sharing this with us. It's really appreciate it. Thank you.
That's all for this episode of the Neuro Performance Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to stay connected, rate, review, and visit andymurphy.online to take the next step towards unlocking your pure potential. See you next time.